I watched my wife lying in the middle of the street, her yellow sundress soaked in blood, her belly once round and full of life, terrifyingly still. And a few feet away stood Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, cool as ever, talking on her phone like she was reporting a dented mailbox instead of a dying woman. My unborn daughter was gone before she ever took a breath. And Karen had no idea the man she just destroyed was a federal judge. It all started months earlier, back when life still felt safe, predictable even. I'm Robert Chin, and my wife Sarah and I thought we'd found the perfect place to raise a family, Willowbrook Heights, the kind of suburb where lawns looked cloned and everyone waved from their driveways. We'd moved there 3 years ago, long before things turned ugly. Sarah was 7 months pregnant with our first child. Our little girl we'd already named Emma. Every morning she'd take a 30-minute walk around the neighborhood, doctor's orders, stay active, stay healthy. I'd watch from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, as she strolled past those cookie-cutter houses, one hand on her belly, softly talking to Emma like she was already here. Our home felt like a dream then. The nursery was painted buttery yellow, sunlight streaming through white curtains. We'd spent weekends assembling furniture, arguing playfully about where the crib should go. Sarah had that glow, you know, that light women get when they're full of love and expectation. She'd say, "She's going to have the most wonderful life, Rob." I believed her. Then came Karen. Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed ruler of Willowbrook Heights. Mid-50s, perfect bob haircut, always in pressed khakis, clipboard glued to her hand. She ran the HOA like a personal kingdom. She once measured a neighbor's grass with an actual ruler and fined them because it was half an inch too tall. She sent violation notices like they were love letters, typed, signed, and sealed with her smug signature. At first it was almost funny. She fined us because our mailbox was allegedly too tall. Then she said our garden stones were the wrong shade of gray. When we planted roses to celebrate the pregnancy, she claimed they weren't on the approved vegetation list. Sarah tried to stay calm. "Maybe she's just lonely," she'd say, rubbing her belly, still smiling. "Let's be kind." That was Sarah, always seeing the good. I, on the other hand, saw Karen for what she was, a petty tyrant who got off on power. My wife didn't know my full story, that I spent my professional life dealing with criminals far worse than Karen Mitchell. But at home I didn't want to be Judge Chin. I just wanted to be Rob, the husband, the soon-to-be dad. Karen's harassment grew bolder as Sarah's belly grew larger. She'd show up uninvited, measuring our driveway, photographing the porch from every angle. One day she actually cited us because our doormat was 2 inches wider than the community standard. I remember holding that paper in disbelief, laughing so I wouldn't scream. She measured our doormat, Sarah. But my wife just sighed, tired. "Let's not fight her, Rob. Once the baby's here, she'll find someone else to bother." She was wrong. That morning started like every other Tuesday. Sarah kissed me goodbye, slipped on her yellow sundress, the one with tiny white flowers, and left for her daily walk. I went to my home office, sifting through case files. 10 minutes later, a sound shattered everything. The squeal of brakes, then a sickening thud. I bolted outside. The world slowed. Sarah lay in the middle of the street, her hair fanned across the asphalt, her legs twisted unnaturally. Karen's white BMW sat at an angle, bumper, cracked glass everywhere. And Karen, she was on her phone. Calm. Cold. "Yes, I'd like to report a traffic incident," she said, as if she'd hit a squirrel. "A pedestrian walked into my car. I need this documented for insurance." I dropped beside Sarah. "Honey, can you hear me? Please." Blood pooled beneath her head. Her belly. Our Emma was still. "Someone call 911, I shouted. From a porch, Mrs. Peterson yelled she was calling. Karen ended her call and walked over, clipboard in hand. "Pedestrian accidents reflect poorly on our community safety statistics," she muttered. I stared up at her. "You hit my wife." Her tone didn't even change. I was within the speed limit. She wasn't watching where she was going. I'll never forget that moment, the disconnect, the sheer absence of humanity. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing. Paramedics lifted Sarah onto a stretcher, shouting codes I didn't understand. Head trauma, placental abruption. I rode with her, gripping her hand, whispering her name. She whispered back, once barely audible. "Is Emma okay?" I couldn't answer. 3 hours later, Dr. Martinez found me in the waiting room. One look at his face, and I knew. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chin. We couldn't save the baby." I don't remember sitting down, but I remember the weight of those words crushing me, hollowing me out from the inside. We buried Emma a week later. A tiny white casket, a simple grave under a big oak tree. Sarah held my hand so tight it left marks. After that, she stopped speaking much. Some nights I'd find her in the nursery holding the little yellow onesie, staring at the crib that would never be used. Then came the knock on the door. Another envelope. Another HOA violation because our grass had grown past the limit while we were at the funeral. I tore it in half, but that didn't stop her. Next week, another fine for trash cans. She didn't even give us time to breathe. The police called it a tragic accident. Karen had friends on the force, her late husband was one of them. The report was short, convenient, clean. No charges filed, case closed. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was too angry. Maybe it really was an accident. Maybe fighting would only hurt Sarah more. I sat awake nights staring at Emma's photo, wondering if justice was even real or just something we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Then one evening, Mrs. Peterson knocked on our door. She looked terrified. "I saw what happened," she whispered. "Karen was speeding. She was looking at her phone. She didn't even brake until she hit Sarah." I grabbed her hands. "Please tell the police." But she shook her head. "Karen said she'd make trouble for my mother's housing if I talked." That was the moment the fog lifted. Karen wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. And she'd built an empire of fear around this neighborhood. People obeyed her not out of respect, but because she held power over their peace. And I had been complicit by staying silent. So I started digging, quietly, carefully. I pulled public records, tax filings, HOA budgets. It didn't take long to find the rot. Karen had been stealing from the HOA for years, fake invoices, kickbacks from contractors, even using community funds to pay her personal legal fees. And the kicker: she'd been in 3 other car accidents, all swept under the rug. I knew what I had to do. Justice isn't revenge, it's exposure. I contacted the IRS, anonymously sent them her fraudulent tax records. I filed reports with the state attorney general about her embezzlement. I tipped off insurance companies she'd scammed. Within weeks, her world started cracking. The IRS launched an audit. The postal inspectors opened a mail fraud case. Contractors turned on her. But Karen still didn't connect the dots. She kept driving by our house, glaring at us from behind her tinted windows. Sometimes she'd stop and leave fresh citations taped to the door claiming unauthorized garden items. Sarah would cry quietly, then go outside and tend to the small patch of flowers she'd planted for Emma. I think that's when I realized Karen wasn't just a bully, she was addicted to control. 6 months after Emma's death came the day that broke her facade. It was Emma's first birthday. Sarah and I brought a tiny cake and yellow roses to her grave. We sang softly through tears. Then, like a ghost, Karen appeared, clipboard in hand, HOA badge gleaming. "This memorial garden violates municipal regulations," she said. "You'll need to remove it." Sarah collapsed, sobbing, clutching the cake. I stood there, something cold rising inside me. "Karen," I said quietly, "do you know who I am?" She smirked. "Yes. You're Robert Chin, 247 Maple Street, current violator of several HOA rules." I took a step closer. "No. I'm the Honorable Robert Chin, federal judge of the United States District Court. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Her clipboard slipped from her hand. "You're lying." I didn't blink. "I've been building a federal case against you for months. Mail fraud, tax evasion, racketeering, vehicular homicide. Did you really think you could kill my daughter and get away with it?" For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Real human fear. Within days, the hammer fell. The FBI raided her home and the HOA office. Boxes of forged contracts, fake inspection reports, and falsified accounts. The IRS filed charges. The state launched an investigation. And yes, vehicular homicide was added to the list. Witnesses finally came forward protected under federal law. Mrs. Peterson, a delivery driver, even the cop who once covered for her. I wasn't in the courtroom when she was sentenced. I'd recused myself from any formal involvement, but I sat in the gallery every day holding Sarah's hand as the prosecution laid it all out, phone records showing she was texting when she hit Sarah's security footage, proving she was speeding witnesses, testifying she never even tried to help. Karen's lawyer called it a tragic accident. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. 15 years for fraud, 10 more for homicide. 25 years total. When the judge read the sentence, Karen turned in her seat, eyes darting toward me like maybe I'd show mercy. I didn't. I just looked back calm, unflinching. Because mercy was for those who felt remorse. She never did. Her empire crumbled. The HOA was dissolved. Residents finally spoke out about years of intimidation. The funds she'd stolen were returned to the community and the families she'd hurt. And for once, Willowbrook Heights became what it was supposed to be, a neighborhood, not a dictatorship. But I didn't feel joy. Justice isn't a celebration, it's a reckoning. Sarah and I never had another child. The wound was too deep. But we built something else, Emma's Law. It ensures HOA boards are held accountable, that abuse of power is treated as the crime it is. We started a foundation to help families like ours, people who've lost loved ones because of negligence and arrogance. 12 years later, Karen got out early for good behavior. She works at a convenience store now, living in a one-bedroom apartment, driving a rusted car that barely runs. I've seen her once or twice at the grocery store, at the post office. She looks away every time. Her shoulders slump, her eyes hollow. She knows I remember. She knows justice remembers. Sometimes I stand in my yard at sunset, watching the light fall across the yellow roses Sarah planted Emma's roses. And for a fleeting moment I imagine a little girl running through them, laughing, sunlight catching her hair. That's when I realize justice isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about making sure no one else suffers the way we did. It's about love outlasting cruelty. Because power fades, fear fades, but truth never does.